how naive, how stupid do these politicians think we are? The answer is a resounding very
recent disorder. The disorder is intolerable. It is incapable of justification. It's clearly racist, and it does not represent the modern, forward-looking Northern Ireland that I know that this place is.
Is he so politically stupid to think that people will put up with 5 years of misery?
That more than half of people think Britain is, quote, moving in the wrong direction now, and Starmer's approval rating has plummeted 7 points from +7 to 0.
Is Keir Starmer having a mental breakdown? That's the question on the minds of many Britons as they witness the Labour leader's erratic behaviour, endless U-turns and apparent hypocrisy. From his mishandling of the economy, his chaotic response to riots, and his failure on immigration to his mismanagement of prisons and Northern Ireland, Starmer's actions have left the public not just confused but genuinely concerned about his mental state. Is this the man who can lead the country, or is he struggling under the weight of his own contradictions? More importantly, people are worried about the future. To see this mental decline, watch his major speech. It's nothing short of a horseman of the apocalypse announcing the impending doom of Britain.
And part of that is being honest with people about the choices that we face, how tough this will be. And frankly, things will get worse before they get better. I didn't want to release prisoners early. I was chief prosecutor for 5 years. It goes against the grain of everything I've ever done. But to be blunt, if we hadn't taken that difficult decision immediately, we wouldn't have been able to respond to the riots as we did.
That's your Prime Minister telling you that things are going to get worse. The leader, who is supposed to be a symbol of hope and prosperity, is announcing to people the incoming decline. Instead, he's pushing the doom and gloom. I guess Sir Keir is having an emo phase. Releasing the prisoners early is just one of the many horrible policy decisions he has made since then. Call it a difficult decision if you want. Blame it on the previous government even. However, nobody can deny that this decision only helps in escalating the problem. Firstly, let's see the hypocrisy of it to truly understand the mental struggle he's in. Here's a video of Starmer bashing Rishi Sunak for proposing the same idea.
Does the early release of stalkers, domestic abusers, and those considered a risk to children sound like the work of someone who is making the country more secure?
Now that Starmer has taken the exact same decision, does this seem the work of someone who is making the country more secure? Or is it indicative that Starmer is having a meltdown? Under his leadership, the state of Britain's prisons has continued to deteriorate, with overcrowding, violence and poor conditions becoming the norm. If that isn't a clear sign that Starmer isn't doing very well with regard to his mental health, then I don't know what is.
Soft on crime, soft on the causes of crime. Welcome to Labour Britain, where 40,000 prisoners could now be released early. New Prisons Minister James Timpson has previously had this to say about prisoners.
We have 85,000 people in prison. It's going to go up to 100,000 pretty soon. A third of them should definitely be there. There's another third in the middle, which probably shouldn't be there.
That's pretty much the reaction of the British public. They're concerned, and they should be. Keir Starmer promised to be tough on crime as a way to solve the deep rot that has taken over this nation. Unfortunately, his idea of tough means letting people out early. Now, you might think these are only petty criminals, but no. The policy is filled with loopholes that can let violent criminals out on the streets. He went back on his promise, and this is what he had to say about it.
Not having enough prison places is about as fundamental a failure as you can get. And those people throwing rocks, torching cars, making threats, they didn't just know the system was broken. They were betting on it, gaming it. They thought, they'll never arrest me. And if they do, I won't be prosecuted. And if I am, I won't get much of a sentence. They saw the cracks in our society after 14 years of failure, and they exploited them.
So, is he admitting that his government is a fundamental failure? You have to understand here that a leader who just throws his hands in the air, saying nothing is in his control, just shows how his mind is cracking under pressure. Criminals are exploiting the system, as he admits, and yet he's introducing more policies to let them out early. It's ludicrous and makes no sense whatsoever. We're already seeing the consequences of this policy, and it's not pretty.
Keir Starmer has just launched Operation Early Dawn. In a nutshell, this means that the Labour government, who wanted to release people from prison early to free up space, are now coming up with ways to lock people up. Well, today, a mother of 6 who threw a brick at police in Hartlepool was jailed for 2 years. Now, that's bad. Obviously, that's bad, and probably deserves prison. But then also today, a man with a history of violence who tried to suffocate a pregnant woman with a pillow was given a 2-year suspended sentence. I mean, which one would you rather have locked up?
There's no justification for what the woman did, but if anything, didn't she deserve a suspended sentence since she has a clean record? Granted, this is a very difficult position for him to be in, but how much benefit of the doubt can we give him? It'd be one thing if the progress was slow, but in this case, he's doing the exact opposite of what should be done. His failures suggest a leader who is mentally checked out, unable or unwilling to confront the harsh realities of his policies. Watch this journalist try to wrap his head around this bizarro world politics.
How we now live in a country where career criminals walk scot-free in this soft sort of justice scandal. And today we discover that zombie knife-wielding thugs will be entitled to £10 compensation. Jonathan, what sort of message are we sending to people in this country about what you get for doing things that are wrong and how you're treated for just following the rules and acting correctly within the confines of the law?
Not only are these people being let out, they're being compensated. And compensation for what exactly? Breaking the law. We are glorifying criminals at this point, and people are concerned about what kind of message this sends. The honest, hard-working people who abide by the law and make this country great are less of a priority for Starmer than criminals and thugs. Don't believe me? Here's a former MP laying out the stats of the matter.
Under this Labour government, we've now got people getting out after only 40% of their sentence being served, and it's not clear what type of criminal is being released at 40%. Is it murderers and rapists alongside those who've committed burglary and assault, for example? You know, and at the same time, Neil O'Brien, who did this amazing piece of work I think the Telegraph's led with, has shown that 50% of the crimes are committed by just 10% of the offenders. These people need locking up.
What's worse is that they'll probably re-offend. That's just how criminals operate, and punishment is the only deterrent civilized societies have. Now that Starmer has gotten rid of the deterrents, what are we supposed to do? It's like he's having a midlife crisis and we're the ones suffering for it. Is Starmer mentally equipped to handle the complexities of criminal justice reform, or is he simply out of his depth? If you think that's bad, you haven't seen anything yet. This abyss of hypocrisy and mental breakdowns goes much deeper. Here's how Starmer has been dealing with the illegal immigration crisis that is crippling the nation.
You're sitting there with tens of thousands of people. Just
when
let me finish.
illegal migrants come to our country,
of people
what will you do with them?
Processed
it's
their
a very
claims.
simple question.
Well,
I can tell people what I will do with them. I will put them on planes to Rwanda because they shouldn't be able to stay. What will you do with illegal migrants who come to our country? What will you do with them? It's a simple question.
His plan is
what will you do with them?
They need to be processed at the moment.
Processed?
They're not. These
which
claims
means giving
are not
them,
being processed.
to be clear, will mean most of them will be given asylum. They will
get
the right to remain in this country.
At the moment, 100% of them are effectively being granted asylum in this country because they can't go anywhere.
Remember when Starmer promised to put a stop to illegal immigration? Then, he scrapped the Rwandan plan of the previous government that was set to act as a deterrent. And now, under his government, though he promised to smash the gangs that are behind the small boats, the numbers of illegal migrants are soaring. This is a leader who can't figure out how to deliver on his promises. His policy of strengthening the borders and breaking the gangs has only resulted in him having a breakdown. Just see the way he struggles to answer simple questions. That to me seems like someone who urgently needs a vacation or a therapist, preferably both.
Good evening. Well, I hate to say I told you so, but I did say back in 2020 that unless we started deporting people that illegally crossed the English Channel, the numbers would simply go up. Over the course of the last 2 days, 1,100 people have crossed the English Channel. There was a moment this morning during which there were 11 dinghies at the same time out in the English Channel. We've gone through 20,000 for the year. That is higher than we were at this point in 2022, which was the previous record year that finished up with a total number of 48,000. So that's...
Well, that's a failure in record time. Despite his claims and platitudes, the numbers are increasing instead of going down. The Labour government hasn't even succeeded in keeping the numbers frozen or slowing them down. That shows how poorly formulated the plan is, and it is not working. So despite his hypocrisy, Starmer did make a U-turn from loving immigrants to vowing to deport them. Where did that lead us? Failure. Starmer's next argument is that they can't do it without help. Sadly, there isn't much rationale behind it, as Nigel Farage points out.
You know, Sir Kier was in Berlin today. We'll come to some of the other aspects of that. But he did say, he says, we cannot smash the smuggling gangs who perpetrate this vile trade without the help of our partners. But my argument is this. The financial rewards are so enormous that a gang operating out of Dunkirk or Calais can make a net profit of a couple of million euros in a calm week in the summer. Even if you smash one gang, aren't they just going to be replaced by another?
Of course, the illegal gangs that often compete with each other will just keep flooding in as long as Britain continues to accept illegal immigrants. The Labour government is in the mood to play whack-a-mole with them at the expense of Britain. These horrible policies aren't just political missteps, they're signs of a leader whose mental state might be fraying under the pressures of leadership. People can see that, and they're protesting in the streets to have their voices heard. However, the way Starmer deals with them and paints them as hateful bigots is delusional, to say the least. Here's what he said recently in Northern Ireland.
The disorder is intolerable. It is incapable of justification. It's clearly racist, and it does not represent the modern, forward-looking Northern Ireland that I know that this place is. So I'm very pleased to achieve all those three things today and to work with all communities, to work with PSNI and others to ensure that we handle this situation, not just the immediate disorder, but also the longer-term work that's necessary.
Starmer's flip-flopping on immigration policy isn't just a political issue, it's a matter of trust. If he can't stick to his principles on such a crucial issue, what does that say about his mental fitness to lead the country? And what happens when people speak up against it? They're labeled racist and hateful bigots. This moral pandering completely alienates thousands of people who are simply frustrated with the government's continuous failures.
It's not racist to speak out about the huge numbers of people who are coming here illegally. It is not racist to want to stop the trafficking. It's not racist to want to stop the gangs. But Starmer doesn't want to. He thinks much of immigration law in this country is racist. He said it when he was DPP. He thinks it's racist to deport people who are here illegally. So how is he going to solve this problem? You just said 500 on Saturday. How is he going to tackle this?
That's exactly it. People are not racist for raising valid concerns about illegal immigration that puts enormous pressure on British institutions. But Starmer insists that it is. In fact, he doubles down on it. What's concerning is, again, his inconsistency. At one point he says that deportation is wrong, then he says he'll do something about it, and we've seen no progress whatsoever. This is a crisis, and people have a right to expect quick action. What they got instead were double standards and prison sentences. Here's what this news reporter and a Conservative MP had to say about it.
Then you have these hard left protests where there has been a lot of violent disorder, particularly in London. What is happening to those people? I'm not aware of any arrest, and this plays into this narrative of this two-tier policing, which I think is corrosive for the country.
So, Carol, when it all first started kicking off, right, very quickly it was all far right this, far right that, far right this, far right that. And then we got whopping great big numbers of arrests, whopping great big prison sentences, brackets up to it. And now Keir Starmer has openly stood up and used the word racist.
Jail for one, and for the other, none. That's the recurring motif here. This selective outrage and blanket labeling of people as racist rioters is deeply offensive. Especially when, at the same time, the Notting Hill Carnival, a mess of violence and chaos, is celebrated by the same government as a mostly peaceful occasion. Without a doubt. People are being disillusioned by Starmer's government, and he's having a mental breakdown over it. Here are the stats on how violent the carnival was and how tone-deaf Starmer chose to be over it.
Here's what I don't get. 330 people were arrested. There were 8 stabbings. 3 people are fighting for their lives. And over 70 police officers, men and women, were stabbed, attacked, assaulted, whatever. And not one sign of Starmer's militia on the streets of Notting Hill. Now, everybody who watches and listens to this station knows what I'm talking about. Is that what we've come to? Because that is 2-tier goddamn policing. Why were those 330 not dragged from their beds this morning on Sky and every other television network so that the country knows that that sort of behaviour in the streets is not allowed?
We all want a safe Britain. We truly want what's best for this nation. However, that can't be achieved through double standards. Violence of any sort, no matter who's committing it, should be condemned. Starmer talks a great deal about the violent riots, and he is right to condemn them. However, he is not right to look away when similar degrees of lawlessness go on elsewhere. What's more is that the blanket labeling of everyone as racist or a violent rioter is unacceptable. It shuts down legitimate debate and smears people by the weird moral superiority we've seen so often by the Labour government. Naturally, people don't appreciate that, and his approval ratings are plummeting.
Which has been carried out by the More in Common organisation, revealing that Sir Keir Starmer's approval rating has plunged to a record low of -16, a drop of 27 points from his post-election high of +11. I mean, he has plunged a long way in a very short space of time. And as I was discussing with Isabel Oakeshott earlier, it's almost as if he's trying to alienate vast swathes of the public.
No wonder the people aren't okay with this chaos. Starmer's response to the recent riots and the chaos at the Notting Hill Carnival has been equally concerning. The public's frustration with Starmer's handling of these events isn't just about his policies, it's about his apparent inability to take decisive action. This suggests a leader who is mentally overwhelmed and unable to make the tough calls required in moments of crisis. Of course, what do people do when they're having a mental breakdown? They go on a power trip. That's exactly what Starmer did. In a completely unrelated and unnecessary move, he's aiming to ban smoking in pubs. Sir Keir, aren't there more pressing matters to deal with at the moment?
Over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking. That's a preventable death. It's a huge burden on the NHS, and of course it's a burden on the taxpayer. So yes, we are going to take decisions in this space. More details will be revealed, but this is a preventable series of deaths, and we've got to take the action to reduce the burden on the NHS and reduce the burden on the taxpayer. I think it's important to get the balance right, but everybody watching this who uses the NHS will know that...
Sure, smoking isn't exactly the healthiest habit to pick up, but shouldn't people have the freedom to make their own choices? While Starmer's got his sights set on snuffing out smoking, the whole nation seems to be going up in flames. Maybe the real question is, does Starmer even have his priorities straight, or is he just blowing smoke? Of course, like every other Labour policy, this will have disastrous consequences, and Nigel Farage points quite a few of them out.
I don't think the government have thought through the consequences of this. Are we really going to be smoke-free by 2030? Well, let me ask another question. Are we going to be drug-free by 2030? So what the government's doing, it's attacking something that's legal, because it's given up on attacking the illegal drugs trade. But if you tax tobacco too heavily, which we're doing, you regulate, almost ban people from smoking anywhere, what you do is you drive it into the hands of the criminals.
There is always an economic fallout from over-regulating and over-taxing the tobacco industry. Pubs and small businesses are already feeling the pinch. When the government tightens the noose too much, what happens? Black markets start thriving. Keir Starmer, in his infinite wisdom, seems to be steering the country straight into that murky direction. The truth is, the economy is a mess, the taxes are rising, society is collapsing, and Starmer is crumbling under the pressure, much of which comes from his own policies. Nobody's buying their excuses either, as this next clip shows.
Rubbish. You were Shadow Chancellor, that means you shadowed what was going on, you knew what the books were like, and everything, of course, in the manifesto, ahead of that snap election, the Labour Party said, no, everything's been fully costed, everything's funded. All of a sudden now, after a month in power, and it's like, oh, guess what? We're going to need to raid you, we're going to need to get even more money, and here are some of our mad schemes that we're now going to want to pay for that we didn't tell you about.
It was always an excuse to divert the blame. You're telling me the Labour Party was in the opposition for years and they had no idea what was happening to the economy. That's either announcing that the Labour Party is incompetent or they're lying. Pick your poison. One way or another, we're the ones getting punished for it. We all had high hopes for the government and we've all been let down. Do they think you and I are stupid? Well, sadly, yes.
How naive, how stupid do these politicians think we are? The answer is a resounding very. How stupid do they think we are that, we know that they get that when you raise all these taxes on employers and all these other things that don't affect the consumer directly, they're going to be passed on by the increased price of goods and services to Muggins here in 5 minutes. So it's really stupid to say we're increasing corporation tax.
Since Starmer is now raising taxes on corporations and manufacturers, who do you think is going to pay for it? Our wallets, of course. It's simple economics. More taxes, more cost incurred, hence prices increase. As Starmer said, it's going to get worse. Taxes will increase, despite his promises. They're already taxing pensioners and scrapping their fuel payments, and we're next. Here's what he said about the upcoming budget.
There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden. I'll have to turn to the country and make big asks of you as well, to accept short-term pain for long-term good, the difficult trade-off for the genuine solution.
It would not be a bad pitch if it were genuine. Only if he hadn't gone back on all the promises he made before the elections. What's another broken promise? Starmer needs to take a vacation and deal with his mental health. We, as the backbone of this nation, do not deserve his tantrums and power trips just because he's crumbling under pressure. I, for one, truly hope that Kier sorts himself out and leads the nation instead of making U-turns, calling everyone a racist and throwing harmful policies at our faces. The first step is for the Labour Party to take a hard look at its leader and ask the difficult questions. Is Starmer truly capable of leading, or is it time for a change? For the public, the next steps are clear demand accountability. Starmer's constant erratic behaviour is a clear sign of a leader in distress. Raise your voices, you have the right to be concerned. Join us in our quest for accountability and a prosperous Britain by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.